Hello, welcome to Creativity Boost Podcast. What would life be like if you understood the billion-dollar business code? What would life be like if you knew the code to crack any business open for massive cash flow? What would your life be like if you understood how to take a business from doing six figures to doing seven, eight, nine, or even 10 figures? Well, today I brought in someone who has been there and done it. His name is Kurt Euler. And today we're going to be unpacking his story, and we're going to be unpacking some strategies that will help you turn your creativity into a billion-dollar business. Now, a quick disclaimer here. I'm not in any way saying that by listening to this episode, you're going to run off and from nothing, you're going to become a billionaire overnight. But if you understood the billion-dollar business code that Kurt and I are going to be unpacking today, and it only helped you increase your business revenue by $10,000 a month, $50,000 a month, $100,000 a month, maybe even $1 million a month, would that be worth your while? So today I'm going to bring Kurt up stage and we're going to begin the conversation. Hi Kurt, how you doing? Good to have you here. Good to be speaking with you once again. I want you to reintroduce yourself to us for those who may be listening to us for the first time before we get this started.
Yeah, happy to. With your disclaimer, I should add, I'm not a billionaire, but I have helped multiple companies create billion-dollar valuations themselves and generate billions of dollars of revenue over time. So this is a code that that we have helped kind of unlock and works for people at any size, solo entrepreneur doing a side hustle, but especially people and companies that are trying to create a hyper-growth scenario as well. With that, I did not take a traditional path to leadership. I think most of your listeners haven't either. They're working on their creativity while they have a full-time job, trying to figure out a new company, or they're just into that. I was there. I built businesses early in my life. At 14, I was hiring enough people. I had to form 2 LLCs just to deal with taxes. That really helped shape my expertise, where I learned that it took relentless execution, hiring and developing high-performing teams, and constantly learning from my successes and failures to get to where I'm at now, where I've helped lots of companies grow from a couple $100,000. Usually I don't step in until a company is a couple $1 million in revenue, but we've helped 2 companies scale into the billions of dollars of revenue. So with that, I've advised thousands of founders, executives very frequently. The current president of the United States, which is really weird to say. We might talk about that a little more. And so that's kind of my background. I'm into high growth companies, and I do consider myself very creative when I have something to work with. You give me a blank slate, I'm not creative. I'm actually, anything that comes from me trying to be creative from a pure blank slate, horrible. But I'm really good at taking what works in many different industries or areas and pulling it together into this milieu that works for me and the companies I'm at, and creating something that's new and that has the potential to grow to hypergrowth.
Wow, that is phenomenal. Now, to really dive deep into this concept of billion-dollar business code, I want us to start by really looking at what you think are the major problems that keeps businesses stuck at one particular level, and what inspired you to get into this journey of helping businesses scale and achieve massive success.
Yeah, great question. I think the biggest thing that holds people back, where they stall out or they hit a growth level, either as an individual, but especially as you're hiring people, what stops people from growing is they cap out on companies just cannot scale past the capacity of the people. And that's both the perception of what each individual is capable of, as well as their true skills. I've had probably a dozen times over my career where if you had asked me beforehand, was I maxing out at my capacity, I'd have said yes. I'm at 99 to 100% of the maximum value I can be put out. And then something happened, and looking back, I was truly only maybe operating at 20 to 30% of the new level because something figured out. And so in that case, I had the skills to be doing a lot more, but myself and my companies were limited by my perception of what I thought was possible. But I think where companies tend to to stop much more, and what stops them from growing and getting into hundreds of thousands of dollars and billions of dollars of value creation is they're focused on so much on the short-term numbers and hitting revenue targets or some perceived made-up goal this week, this month, this quarter, that they're not investing into themselves and especially the people that work for them to increase that capacity. I mean, my goal always now is, how do I make you, if you're on my team, what can I do today to remove things that are hindering you from reaching the business outcomes I hired you to do? And that could be a blocker, or that could mean that you just don't have the skills yet. And me as the boss, I should be either pouring into you or investing in your training from somewhere else so that you'll be more capable next week than you are today.
Great. So what would you say the $1 billion mindset is all about? Being someone who has helped companies grow their revenue into the $1 billion market cap, I believe there's a mindset that has helped you achieve that. And if there's a mindset, can you help us begin to unpack that in your own way?
Yeah, the great question. I think that the mindset is really always to be thinking and questioning, am I and am I as the company operating in a way that makes massive impact inevitable? I mean, again, don't focus on what the results are today, this week, or this month, but are you doing things, and are you relooking at systems and processes and how you actually operate every day and the flow of your energy, so that success is going to become inevitable. And an example of even in the energy is I know that I am much more creative in the mornings and in the early AM. You put me down to write, I can take 20 to 30 minutes and write 8,000 words at 6 a.m. But if you ask me to do that at 3 p.m., it might take me 2 hours. I won't get anywhere near as far along. And so you're always coming in with a $1 billion mindset of saying, am I doing things that just success is going to become inevitable? For me, how do I unpack that a little more? Well, what does that actually look like? It focuses on 4 things for me from a principle perspective. Execution over ideas. I mean, ideas, creativity are meaningless unless you're actually executing on them. You have a great idea for a book. Until you get the first draft completed, it doesn't matter. There's nothing there. I'm right there. I've got 50 articles for my website that I'm 90% of the way done. What does it look like to somebody that comes to my website? 0 additional articles. So it doesn't matter that I'm 90% of the way there. So it's always execution over ideas. Yeah. Especially as you hire people, it's a speed of iteration, testing, failing, learning, and thinking about everything you're doing in terms of you don't have it figured out. Everything is a test and to iterate and come back on and work on it better. A third thing for me of a principle is this concept of servant leadership. The moment that I hire you, yes, I may have an authority over you to be able to fire you, but my job is to show up every day and to see how I can serve you and the organization to help you and the organization hit the numbers and the outcomes that I brought you onto. It's a completely different mindset than the way most people approach building their companies. And that third thing or fourth thing for me is having a long-term vision, but a short-term urgency. I always care about building momentum, but it goes back to that first thing is, what's the execution? So at the end of the day, it's if I didn't get shit done, it doesn't matter.
Wow, that is really, really amazing. And I believe that will be really, really informative and, captivating for our listeners. And that brings me to another question. In fact, before I go to my next question, I want to say something about servant leadership that you spoke about, because that was something that really attracted me to you, because you are someone who embodies the concept of servant leadership so well. And to hear that also played into your $1 billion mindset, it's really phenomenal, because most people have not been able to find a connection between leadership and business growth, leadership and scaling businesses. Yet they feel like, well, when it's time to scale a business, they want to talk about sales, they want to talk about marketing, but to talk about leadership as being a major component in helping that billion-dollar mindset gain expression is really phenomenal. And my next question goes like this. I'm going to start by bringing up a case study of the popular man that we all know, the founder of the Amazon company, Jeff Bezos. Report has it that when he founded the Amazon company, he did that from his garage, and then he worked on that company. He had a big vision. He worked on that vision for at least 10 years before he broke even. Today, Amazon has, exceeded the billion-dollar market cap, right? And if not already, it's heading towards the trillion-dollar market cap, if I'm not mistaken. So that tells you a lot about mindset, to stay on something that big, even when it did not look like it was going to be something, or it was worth putting the effort that he put in at the time. He stayed on it, right? And I think that is more of a mindset thing. So what would you say we can learn from that? Is there anything that you think creatives, individuals who want to manifest their creativity, who want to go from concept to cash flow, they're working on their ideas, they're working on their dreams, they're working on their concept, they're working on their project, they're working on their business. Let's not even talk about getting to $1 billion a year. Let's talk about just getting to 10K months, 100K months, $1 million months, but nothing is working. They are not even able to break even. What do you have to say about this situation, and what do you think the right mindset should be to help unlock that cash flow, that $1 billion business code?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, especially with the example of like a Jeff Bezos, or looking at some others, well-known, billionaires or people that have been successful. I look at what does it take to kind of approach that, and for people where you said like they're trying but they're not even breaking even, their side hustle that they want to do is costing them money right now. Not only is it not breaking even, but it's like it's costing them money to do this,
plunging them into debt.
Right. I think it's really important for everybody to also realize that those people that have already been crazy successful, like a Mark Zuckerberg, a Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk, most of those people have personal PR people that have shaped a story that is not real. And or if you knew that person's actual life, you wouldn't want their life. And so I just say that in terms of like, hey, we've all heard stories of somebody that wins the lottery. But then if you look at the data and you go, somebody that won the lottery, like 70 to 80% of them are actually bankrupt. Not only are they back to where they were, they're worse than they were before they won the lottery. So you go, well, do you really want to win the lottery then? I think that's really important to think about, because how I want to answer you is based on what I've seen from people being successful. And so for me, one of the reasons that I both lead the way that I do, but give advice, is I want to maximize the chance that you as an individual, somebody that's listening to this, that you are successful, not just monetarily, but in your life, which may mean a very different approach than like how a Jeff Bezos or somebody did. And so I think one of the biggest things that, if you look at people that try to become an entrepreneur or try to really grow a company, like what nobody tells you is most of these people fail. And that doesn't mean they fail monetarily. And that doesn't mean they don't learn. That doesn't mean that doesn't help their career. But the company that they tried starting doesn't work. And then you go, why? Well, I've seen a ton into this, both what's worked, and the people that I coach have a very high success rate as well from finding monetary success. And part of that is they tend to avoid burnout. And as somebody who's been in burnout in my life, like I can coach to that a lot of ways. And so most people fail, even if they have a good idea, they fall off from the execution we talked about because they get burned out. They're trying to do everything themselves. They haven't figured out the why about why they're building things. I mean, you asked earlier, why do I lead the way that I do? I lead the way that I do, and I'm working not because I want to make money. I mean, I do. And the good thing is I make a really good bit, and I make other people lots of money. So you want to pay me money for that. But the reason that I work is because I love people, and I believe that the best way for me to coach somebody to help you find success both monetarily and in your personal life is to actually be your boss, be your manager, and have those 8 to 40 people that are directly reporting to me, because you get to see me day in and day out when things are going good and bad. So that's why I show up. That's my personal why. I have another friend. He's on like his third or fourth company. He's had really successful exits in the past, and he was burnt out in the first one. But he was still making good money. And what changed for him was he and his wife, they had actually started a ministry where they were running a small school system in a country in Africa. And they came back from going and visiting the school. And the person that's leading the school commented about how it's so expensive to bring on teachers and how they were so thankful. And, this guy's in America, and he's thinking, North America, like, tens of thousands of dollars. And so he asked, how much is it to train and bring on a teacher? And the head of this ministry locally says, it's $1,100 to bring on a teacher initially and train somebody. And my friend, he said it just hit him, like somebody hit him with a brick in his head. He goes, I bring on one new customer to this company, and we earn $1,100 a year. So if I just go back and actually work on the job and actually show up the way that I was showing up when I started this thing, we could be bringing on dozens of new teachers on a monthly basis, hundreds of new teachers. And so it changed for him. It was like, whoa. Well, then separately, we have a shared friend. She ended up writing a check to him for that ministry that was 7 figures, because that was extra cash after she had retired her husband. And she was teaching other people to do this. She had enough access money to write a check to our joint friends ministry that it was 7 figures. Well, that was her why, is helping other people learn to do that same thing. Does she make a lot of money? Yes. But she works crazy hard because she has a why that actually isn't about making money. And I find that's what you need to really find success long term. And to your, so I know it's a long answer to your question about Amazon, being an Amazon customer in a lot of areas right now, God, I hate the company. They clearly have no senior product management that understands the Amazon Echo experience, or even when you go into things like the Amazon Music experience. I just say that my wife has spent $1,000 buying individual songs and albums on Amazon Music, but because we don't subscribe to Amazon Prime, the freaking local device won't play songs that she says play this single song, because they don't have somebody thinking about that experience, because the company's not thinking at this point, how do we make this whole experience best for all of the types of customers that we have. And so would I like to have Jeff Bezos money? Well, yes, but what I really want is my customers and clients to be super successful.
Thank you so much for that response. And you said a lot of really interesting stuff. You talked about different examples and how a light bulb moment brought about a turning point in the business of people who you have actually worked with. So let's pivot our conversation into the interplay of creativity and innovation, and these light bulb moments, these flashes of brilliant ideas that propel creative action. What is the interplay between this and business growth and massive cash flow in business endeavors?
Yeah, it's not about hiring creative people. I think that's what everybody, especially your audience, given that's your focus, needs to think about. It actually, I think, some way it can hurt company growth to be that really creative person yourself, unless you bring on somebody who's very operational and can think in terms of administration, because these work together. And so what I find for finding success is, it's not about being creative or hiring creative people. It's about creating an environment where ideas can be tested, refined, and executed on. But before you can even test something, that environment has to create a space where people, especially people that are not, they wouldn't view themselves as creative, where they have a space where they feel like they can throw out ideas. They can throw out known bad ideas. and that you encourage, especially as a team starts to grow, or like I'm at a company called Easy Home Search now, and so we're dozens of people, and so that we can across the team throw out ideas to collaborate, knowing that it might be a bad idea, and I don't have all the viewpoint that you do in your area of focus, but I can throw out something. And one, you'll accept that idea, but knowing that even if my idea is bad, it might spark something in you, being that the subject matter expert, that you wouldn't have had unless I asked that kind of unintelligent question. So there's this psychological safety where I think most people don't focus on creating an environment where, whether you're a creative person or a non-creative person, that psychological safety can allow people to have ideas, have a milieu of ideas that come out, and then we can bake that kind of psychological safety into a process and a culture, and that's what will give us the ability to test things going forward.
Great. So how do you balance the need for creativity and displaying creativity, coming up with new ways of doing things, innovating, inventing things? How do you balance that with the need for profitability? Because one problem most businesses have is that they are tilted towards creating products, creating new products, and sometimes that could hurt their profitability. I'm talking about businesses and individuals. So what do you think is the sweet spot between creativity, manifesting creativity, and ensuring that your creativity turns into profitability?
Yeah, great question. The first thing is you have to know your numbers and your runway. Whether if you're a company, like cash flow is if this is the only thing that you're doing, and it's not your side hustle, then that cash flow at the end of the day is the blood that makes the organism run and keeps it alive. And so if you've raised money, if you've invested your own money into this side hustle or this now full-time job that you're doing, you have to know how many months of expenses do we have running a deficit. And you should know that all of the time. I mean, like, you don't need to necessarily be visiting that on a daily basis, but you should not be like categorically wrong on that number. So you should be sitting down at least on a weekly basis to know, hey, has anything changed, or do I still have 32 months left or 32 weeks left? Like, you should know that at the end of the month, because sometimes things change. But the bigger thing for me then is, once you know your numbers, is you have to have a way to be able to both capture ideas and then put them in kind of an ice box until later. I love the idea from engineering about like an ice box for things to be thought about later. We use it in marketing, product people use it, engineers use it. My wife and I use it actually for, we have 2 columns in our Trello board for our household. Because yes, I'm a systems person, so we use Trello for our household. And so we have an inbox just for capturing things that we want to talk about that we would organize later, both where they fit categorically and also priorities. And then a lot of times we'll put something in that list, and where we move it to is a someday maybe list. We've categorized it. We know we'd like to do a specific vacation as an example, but it's not something we're going to do now. So we move it out there to something we'll look at once or twice a year. Your company needs to kind of have a capability for the same thing. I was actually working with my content team this morning at Easy Home Search, and both of my main content editors have a place that they capture brainstorming ideas for new topics they'd like to create, so that when they're writing, it doesn't take them out of the execution of writing a piece that they're working on when they go, maybe we should have an idea about this. And so, like Casey on my team, she had some very specific ideas I looked at this morning. Lee on my team, Lee had an idea for a whole category. And so her idea was like, we could have a template that follows this, and it would be like hundreds of articles on a per state basis. And so it was an idea for her to capture that idea, knowing that somewhere else in the system, me, will pick it up. And then we're now going to run some tests on some of, say, Lee's ideas for that specifically. We'll test small, and if they work for like the state of Georgia, then we'll roll that out everywhere. So we're going to take those brainstorming ideas, make sure we're focused on profitability. I'm just not going to invest in them writing 1,000 articles that I don't know if they work. I'm going to have them invest in writing 36 articles. And if they work, we'll go do that for 50 states.
Great. Now, my next question will be, what do you understand by the term creativity? Because creativity can mean different things for different people. In my most recent book titled Ignite Your Creativity, which you can see behind me, I captured 7 very robust definitions for creativity. And the reason I did that is because when I began to take interest in the domain of creativity, I found out that there was not much solid information out there on the what, the when, and the how of creativity. So in my interactions with people who have, achieved success like you have, I like to also glean in on their understanding of the concept of creativity so that I can also learn from them and so that the audience can learn from their understanding. So with that said, I'm going to ask you, what do you understand by creativity, and how can one turn creativity into massive cash flow, into a $1 billion business, or even into a $1 million business?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, the default that I come to is I think where a lot of people do is that creativity is coming up with a new concept or idea that didn't exist. Like, as far as I know, it's the first person that came up with this. And I've been very successful with things like that. I also know that from a profitability perspective, that's usually the hardest place from a business perspective to go make money in the short or medium term. I mean, there's a book called Blue Ocean Strategy that's basically, hey, coming up with something where there's no competition. Well, that's great because there's no competition, but it also means that you have to convince every potential buyer why they have this problem. And so where I found much more profitability and success is, and a lot of people wouldn't think this is creative, but it's like, I do think sitting down and coming up with just what's the idea of all, for me, the creativity is what are all of the things that either we could do as a company, or like even writing content, as I mentioned, all the things that we could write. And then that's creative just by itself, looking at all those permutations. And it's still creative to pick the single idea for a business where it's highly competitive. Like if you want to create a lawn care business in Roswell, Georgia, there's hundreds of companies that are doing that. That's still a creative process to go through and look at that and even come up with that specific, very competitive idea and go and do that, because you've had to go through this brain thinking process. And it's like doing push-ups to be able to figure out that that's where your skill set applies best. That's still creative to me. And I think that's where business today is so different from a profitability perspective. In the past, like I would tell people, especially if they're doing knowledge work, if they're doing coaching, they're writing content, like you should only be writing content for things where people are searching for it on Google. Well, that's like, you could have made a moderate business before writing for 200 terms where there's no search volume that you would see in Google AdWords or SEMrush or Ahrefs in the back of the day. Well, the same concept, which used to only really apply when Google had so much of the market, though applies everywhere though now when we look at algorithms work basically the same way on YouTube or with Perplexity or ChatGPT. And so now that people are being trained to search very different, like coming out and from a creative perspective and coming up with, I think it's easier to be profitable, to your part of your question, today with new ideas that other people aren't competing in, because people are being trained to search in different ways. I mean, we see like Perplexity is just an example. They're sponsoring, while still kind of a niche network compared to like, NBC or Fox, they're sponsoring Ben Shapiro's podcast, The Daily Wire, specifically where if you like, it's the most unique thing to listen to, because he has like 5 minutes in any show right now where he has a question related to the topic, and then he asks Perplexity. And he's teaching people literally how to speak to a search engine different than most any of us would have spoken to Google 2 years ago or 5 years ago. Well, like that's a complete new field for it. Says you can make money a lot sooner now because there's a lot more places driving traffic than just Google.
Okay, so can you walk us through the $1 billion business code now and how that can be applied to massive cash flow? Because the general theme of the podcast is to help creatives go from concept to cash flow, go from idea to increased income. And now that we've been able to establish that there is such a thing as $1 billion business code that needs to be cracked, even though you're still a thousandaire or a millionaire, as long as you want more from your business, from your creativity, from your potential, this is something that should be, of interest to you. So I want you to take the next few minutes to just walk us through what you understand by the $1 billion business code and how that can be applied to the individual who's out there trying to start out, or the individual who has started out, or who's experiencing some discouragement, or the individual who's yet to break even and has no idea if he's going to become a runaway success if he just exercises some staying power like Jeff Bezos did, or who probably even needs to dump that idea and go start afresh with something new. So I want you to see how much you can speak to these different people as you answer this question.
Yeah, great question. For me, that $1 billion code, it's about structuring your business, structuring your life if you're a solo entrepreneur right now, so that your business can scale at the highest level. I used the term earlier, so that growth becomes inevitable. And so what does that look like? You have to have on your calendar, you should have this code we're going to talk about and be thinking about it all the time, like printed like on a Post-it note, hanging off the corner of your laptop. But I want time on your calendar at least once a week that's forcing you to sit down for 10 or 15 minutes and just like deal with the pain about, are you actually doing these 4 things on a weekly basis? So one is, do you have a market domination mindset? Like, you're not here to compete. You're here to own the category. You mentioned in your book, like, about creativity. There wasn't good information out there, and you wanted to sit down and you figured out 7 different major kind of forms of creativity, and what does that look like? Well, you saw that there wasn't anything out there, and you said, I want to own this category of creativity. That's the market domination mindset that everybody needs to have. And so when you're writing content, you're doing a lawn care business that I mentioned, like, you want to dominate doing lawn care in Roswell, Georgia. That's a mindset. The second thing is building the foundation. And it's not a foundation of systems. We'll talk about that. It's a foundation of strong people, a strong brand, and operations. And those are non-negotiable. But it started with people. Mission first, people always, because the people and their actions are going to be what actually establishes how everybody perceives your company. And that includes you. Like where you're a solo entrepreneur, you should be kicking your own ass if you're not delivering when you do this weekly review. If you haven't got stuff done, well, at the end of the day, that's you. You have to fix your foundation. The third thing is, and it fits with that, but is execution over ideas. Creativity is great. Ideas are great. What you're going to do next is great. Coming up with 1,127 different ideas for topics you could write is a wonderful thing. But you have to have something in place to bank all those ideas somewhere else, or just to say, I have a whole bunch of ideas and I only have a window of 30 minutes to get them out, and then I'm just going to shut it down and go execute, because ideas are meaningless if people don't execute. That's that third part of the $1 billion code. And the fourth one is leveraging system and peoples, and especially for the people of your audience that are a solo entrepreneur, or they've just got a VA. They found a couple of people on Upwork that they're outsourcing some graphics work or something to. Those are people, and even if you don't have that yet, and it's just you're creating systems and you're thinking about what is it going to be like for people. I spoke to somebody this morning that has a pretty good size SEO agency. And so, like most people, they look at his profit and loss system statement and they go, damn, like, he's successful. But like, he's still sitting there scrutinizing every day with things that he has failed at handing off to people. And what stood out to me was we had another friend that asked him, like, what do you want to automate? What do you want to hand off that you can't? And he expressed, like, I've tried 2 or 3 times handing off this part of my business to somebody else, and I can't. But every time that I try handing it off, I get better at doing it myself, because I'm having to document and understand all the little components of it. So he's thinking about, like, and improving even the things that he does himself, because he's trying to hand it off as a system to somebody else. And so, yeah, there's parts of your business that you might not be able to hand off, but it still benefits you getting to that $1 billion code to go through that 4th step that says, like, I need to leverage, I need to try creating systems that I could hand off to other people. So a market domination mindset, building a foundation that's focused on people, execution over ideas, and just looking to leverage systems and people.
Great. There are some people that think, well, when I become a billionaire in dollars, then I would have the $1 billion mindset. What do you think about that? Do you think you have to have billions of dollars in your account before you can say, yeah, I have the $1 billion mindset? Because you made mention of something that there are people who even win a lottery and make billions of dollars, and because they lack the $1 billion mindset, they lose all of it in a very short space of time and become worse off than they were before they won that lottery. There's also the category of people, and we mentioned one of them, Jeff Bezos, who may not have billions of dollars in their account, but they have the $1 billion mindset. They have the $1 billion attitude, the discipline. They have that spirit of entrepreneurship to follow through with their ideas with creativity and turn their creativity into massive cash flow, whether it be hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, or billions of dollars. So taking you back a bit to the concept of the $1 billion business code and the $1 billion mindset, what would you say to people who have that imposter syndrome? In fact, when they hear anything about $1 billion billionaire, they disqualify themselves automatically, naturally. They feel they should not be part of that conversation, right? And this is you came on the show, you helped businesses reach billions of dollars, and you probably have not made billions of dollars yourself, but you've helped people do that, right? So I want you to speak to that mindset deficiency that a lot of people may be having, that's probably keeping them stuck like chalk in a pickup truck, so that these people can actually truly reach for their potential and crack that code for massive cash flow.
Yeah, I think the first thing for me is like that concept that you mentioned about people that think like, when I have $1 billion, when I have a lot of money, and then something will change in their life or their mindset will change. None of the research backs that up. Like, all of the research on anything related to that is different. Who gives the most money when they're wealthy? It's the people that gave the largest percentage when they weren't wealthy. Like, if you look, people that listen to Dave Ramsey, this financial guru, he comments about, he was like, having money, being a millionaire at, when you're 40, or being a millionaire when you retire, it's not an income issue. It's a mindset issue. And he's right. I know people that earn $40,000 and $50,000 a year that will retire, are already millionaires, or will retire with millionaires because they started putting away $100 a month when they were 18 years old. And so now, does it help when you earn a lot more money? Yes. But it's like, when you look at the data about who gives the most money to churches or nonprofits or anything, it's the people that when they were growing their wealth, or they were growing their income, they decided that they were going to give a percentage. Now, whether you agree with tithing or not, like, that's a huge thing. I mean, yeah, 2% of, $2 million a year is a lot more money than 2% of 40 grand. But who consistently gives money? It is the people. The data shows, any faith, any political viewpoint, it's the people that are choosing to give a percentage, and that percentage either stays the same, or what almost always happens is, as they earn more income, they give a larger percentage, which of course then is a larger dollar figure as well. Well, the same thing applies to who you are operating as. And so people think, well, when I have enough money, I'll have time to sit down and actually think through this process. Yeah. Well, how do you get to be successful? You realize today, when you're struggling on your side hustle, or you've got 12 employees, you struggle with, you mentioned before, profit. Profit matters. What I really care about is paying the bills, both the company bills and the household bills. Because if my household's not covered, the company's not covered. But understanding that it's more like, what do people that are really rich know? That it's worth it to go slow, to go fast. It is more important to take time to get your systems in place now than just to start going super fast and then have to redo everything as well. If you want to grow your business, you have to develop leaders early. Like, I was talking to somebody they're looking at raising a C round of money. So they've already raised millions of dollars for an A round, millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars in a B round of funding. And he's wanting to raise a lot more money now for another round of funding. And he's having issues. And so in his mind he's just going to clear the deck for all of his, like most of his leaders right now in his company. And I'm like, you should have made the decision on who you were hiring 24 months ago. And so he's struggling right now with, do they raise money or not? Because he's going to have to completely turn over much of his leadership team. And that's a scary thing to be at because when you take money, you've got to start operating right then. And so you can't wait until you are really wealthy, until you would have $1 billion, until you're hiring your 30th person to start making a decision. You have to decide to go slow to go fast. You have to decide to invest in people today. If you've hired a VA to write your social media posts for your plumbing company and they're not getting it right, well, you can go hire somebody else, yes, or maybe what you need to do is pay them and share with them time to virtually sit next to them and write content so that they can see how your mind thinks, or let them write something and then you go through and rewrite it the way you would want it in your brand voice. Because that's not only helping you, but that's teaching them how you would like the content to sound. That's that change from a hey, I'll do it when I reach this point to oh no, you're never going to hit that point if you don't figure it out today. And some of that takes too, you do need to just kind of, so to speak, kick your own ass to get that done. But it also matters, if this is a side hustle for you, who are you choosing to work for your full-time gig? Or who do you choose to go work for, even if it's just in your career, or who are you hiring? I work for a gentleman right now named Preston, who has started multiple companies that are all successful right now. He's sold off multiple companies. Preston believes in going slow to go super fast, but he is always just he's salivating for what is possible next. He's sitting there going I'm really glad we hit this number, and what can we do tomorrow? And so he pushes me to be better, and I already pushed myself really hard. And so one of the reasons I've chosen to work with this company is specifically because of his drive and his questioning about not just how can I be better, but how can the company be better?
Wow, that was such a great response. And I think that is really, really phenomenal. Now, I want to ask you this question because I believe you will be in a very good position to give us a good answer. So how do billion-dollar business leaders think? Because I've come to understand a principle for wealth creation, and that principle is, if you want to be wealthy, look for the top 5% people who are wealthy and study them, understand how they think, and in no time you'll be wealthy. Right? So how do billion-dollar business leaders think, and how can that thinking be weaved into the lives or the daily lives of people who are just starting out in their journey, who are just maybe making their thousands, or who are about to start making their tens of thousands in their business? How can one incorporate how billion-dollar business leaders think into their daily workflow now that they are nothing near millionaires? Right? So if you can help us unpack that, I believe it will be of great benefit to our listeners.
Yeah, I would say it's a lot harder to do today than it would have been even 10 or especially 30 years ago, because knowing how truly successful people actually got to be successful, it's very hard to do because, as I mentioned, so many of these people, they have a PR person themselves. They have a publicist. You don't actually know what their lives definitely are like. There's a business person out there a lot in software as a service business named Dan Martell. Dan has been really successful. I do believe that I could learn a lot from Dan. And he does coaching, and so he actually creates these masterminds and coaching groups, which does what I think people should do. But it's if you just watch Dan on YouTube, is any of that real or not? You could fake so much of that, and so that's not his fault. I think he actually probably is authentic, but it's very hard to read books from people now and figure that out. I think the biggest way about how people get there nowadays is to kind of maybe do two different things. One is rather than trying to figure out how people are being successful, whatever the topic is that you need to become an expert in, and truly successful people are never an expert in just one area. They're a polymath. They're an expert in writing books and accounting and all these other things. And so go very deep in learning one topic at a time. And here's a little tip for people. Like, I love YouTube, I love podcasts, but your local library probably gives you a free subscription to an app called Libby, Libby, or Hoopla. And if not, there's a bunch of libraries around the United States and Canada that you can pay $50 to $100 a year to be a member there. And both of those applications have free audiobooks and ebooks. And my library happens to give me both of those in Fulton County, Georgia. So my wife listened to 160 audiobooks 2 years ago. She did about 120 last year. And so, like, what do we pay to Amazon? Nothing to audible.com. So she did 160 books in 1 year that we got for free from our library. So you want to talk about budget conscious, it's that. So, like, we have a young son. She didn't listen to one book about raising boys. She listened to 15 books about raising boys. And then that gave her enough of a coverage to be able to have her own unique ideas about the topic. And then I think they need to marry that about going deep about the different subjects they need to learn, go deep on one subject at a time, rather than trying to figure out how other people have been successful. You have to force yourself uncomfortably into situations with other people that are trying to be successful at about the same size business you are or just past it. And so it doesn't matter if they're actually all being successful. What you're wanting to do is, one, hopefully you're going to end up with a mastermind group, an accountability group of people. You might have to be the organizer for that, where you're seeing what other people are doing on a daily and weekly basis. But what I want you to be looking for is who is not being successful in that group. And so you're going to have a guest coming up in a couple of months that's also a member, I think actually a couple that are members of the National Speakers Association of the Georgia chapter here where I am. One of the reasons I joined was I used to be a very prolific keynote speaker back in the past. And that's not been part of my life because we have young kids, but I'm wanting to get back into it. So I joined National Speakers Association Georgia because it's one of the top 2 chapters in the world for it. And it allows me to be around other people that are earning tens of thousands of dollars a year. And some of them are earning millions and tens of millions of dollars a year as paid speakers. So when I go to the meetings and I'm around other people, I can look around and people are opening up their business to talk about what they're doing. And like, I don't shame people, but I almost care less about who's being really successful. I learn from them at times, but I'm looking for the people that are not being successful and going, what are they doing that I'm also doing? Because that's what I want to stop.
Yes, absolutely. And that is another side to the principle I shared, like looking at people who are successful and trying to learn from what they're doing right, and also looking at people who are not successful. Yeah. And whatever you do, don't do what they do, because those two has to go together. And I think I appreciate that you approach the question from that perspective, because many times we tend to put ourselves under undue pressure, because these people who are already successful, they are already at point 10, they're already at level 10 in their journey, right? And you are probably at level 2 in your journey, but you're looking at someone who is at level 10, and instead of getting inspiration from their journey, you're getting demotivation from their journey. Right. So it helps to put a balance to that by looking at people who are not quite as successful, people who may even be below you on the rungs of the ladder or on the same level of you in the ladder, right? And learn things that they probably may be doing wrong that you could potentially be guilty of, so that you can undo those things, unlearn those things, and become better in your own journey to success, whatever success looks like for you. Thank you so much for that. Now, you mentioned some resources that you have leveraged in your own journey. Are there other resources that you feel you can share with us that can help in the journey to becoming a better person, to growing in your leadership, to growing in your business goals, to scaling your business to massive success and whatnot?
Well, from a selfish perspective, I'll give two resources that I have, but they're free, so it's a good cost to people. Is we talked a
Okay,
little bit about servant
go for it.
leadership.
Yeah.
On my website, anybody searches Google for my name and servant leadership, they'll end up finding this business case for servant leadership. Whether you're a solo entrepreneur or you're wanting to bring that concept into a big public company, that's a long article that will walk you through almost every part of that topic that you can think of. And make it simple for people. I also have an article on my site about hypergrowth. So search for my name and hypergrowth. And some of those things that we've spoken about with this $1 billion code will be talked about with examples from companies that I've helped grow to $1 billion in revenue, but that others have as well. And so there'll be a little bit more for some resources there. For me, I think the other thing would be like the only real resource that I would have, I did mention a few apps, would be you have to find a scenario, you have to find situations to put yourself into where it's going to be uncomfortable. It might be uncomfortable from a transparency perspective, like walking out, in your front yard naked, like that would be really uncomfortable. But what you have to do is, like, it might be uncomfortable to show up to Toastmasters. And there's a lot of things I like and a lot of things I don't like about Toastmasters. But if you were wanting to have public speaking in part of your what you're doing, well, you should probably invest some time in that. It's going to be really awkward, and you're going to have to be really bad at it for 1,000 times. So you have to intentionally put yourself into there. And sometimes, frankly, it does just cost money. I mentioned like National Speakers Association. National is expensive, and then you have to write like local chapter dues. And so if you're wanting to get into that, like, there's huge bit of resources when you're in there, but like you might have to write a $1,500 to $2,000 check to walk in the door and be able to do that, for the next year. My gym, like, I don't know how many years, even as a former college athlete, I don't know how many years I paid LA Fitness basically like philanthropy money because I never walked through the door. I pay $200 a month right now to Iron Tribe Fitness because there's a little bit of I love the workout. It's great. It's like CrossFit, but I also know it's expensive enough that if I don't show up, my wife is going to be like, you need to go cancel your membership. And so there's that expense. So it's benefit. It's a huge value, but there's that pain about it's expensive enough that if I'm not using it, like, I'm going to have to cut it. And so I think that's the bigger thing for resources is so often people look for things that are free. And there's a lot of free things that are out there good, but a lot of times those resources, you do need to pay for something to be able to get it through. I've got a friend here in Atlanta named Cooper. Cooper has a course for like solo contributors and managers at companies that like have a hard time. You mentioned imposter syndrome. Every time you have to speak in a Zoom meeting or you have to stand up and give a report to your division, you might throw up beforehand. Like, he has a course for training people on how to do that. Well, like, there's a ton of free resources. There's probably thousands of hours of good resources that teach you just that free on YouTube. But is it worth the like couple $100 to go through Cooper's course to get it buttoned up and have somebody that's like organized it? Like hell yeah, you should just, if that's your issue, you should go pay Cooper like for his course, because like you're going to have it solved in 9 weeks, like solved at 100% chance. And it's like, or you can try to go struggle with and figure it out with free resources. And so I think too often people are looking for free resources when it should be uncomfortable. And some of it is the uncomfortableness will make you do it.
Thank you so much, Kurt. I'm going to ask you one more question before I let you go. Do you have any final words, especially around pitfalls that one can avoid while trying to scale their business or while trying to grow their business, while trying to go from concept to cash flow, while trying to go from idea to increase income? I'd like you to give us the pitfalls or a pitfall that one should be conscious of or should make sure to ensure to avoid as we bring today's conversation to a close.
I think the biggest thing for me is trying to do too many things at once, especially as somebody who has a lot of ideas and has a lot of areas where I think I could improve personally, or the division I manage or the company that I'm over can go do. You can really only, you can only have one highest priority. And so I think the biggest thing for people is they try to improve too many things at once. And so have a system, whether it's note cards, like I literally have note cards on my desk for things that are like I want to come back to before they go into Trello. But if you have one single thing that you're focusing on improving and getting better in your business, and the same thing for what you're having learning from a knowledge perspective. These two things do not have to go together to me. I think what you're trying to improve in your business, whether it's writing or accounting or getting bookings, whatever it is, that can be completely separate than your knowledge thing you're working on. And that knowledge thing could be for your business or it could be for your personal thing. I mentioned my wife, like she went deep into like 15 books on how to raise our son. Like that's a deep single focus. She may have probably covered 8 to 12 of those together before she went to another topic. And she only came back to some other ideas because some other book or person might have mentioned another thing. And so she covered about 15 at the end of the day. But that's having one focus on things that you're learning. Because when you're bouncing around to too many different topics to learn on, like be very aware whether everything that you and I have spoken about, this is my viewpoint from my experience. It might be wrong for you. And so what you want to do is to go deep into a topic. Like somebody wants to learn creativity, they should read your book and 4 to 7 other books on creativity so that they can get their own viewpoint, because like you may be the expert, but maybe it's somebody else's approach to how they describe it that makes the third or fourth concept that you mentioned resonate with them. So they have to get it from different viewpoints.
Wow. Thank you so much, Kurt. That was a masterclass. Thank you for all those phenomenal ideas, thoughts, and, things that you said and shared. I think whoever has listened to this has found immense value just by listening. And I want to encourage you on the other side, take action on all these ideas or on some of these ideas that resonates with you or that you feel applies to you so that you can get results, because the action takers are the money makers. You can listen to all the podcasts about generating massive cash flow all you want. You can listen to all the podcasts, read all the books about becoming a billionaire, raising billions of dollars or making millions of dollars, or monetizing your ideas. But if you do not take action, it will amount to nothing. And so on this note, I'm going to leave today's conversation, and I'm going to say thank you again, Kurt, for coming on the show and bringing the full ammunition and not sparing us at all. Thank you for coming, and to my listeners out there, I'll say I'll see you next time, but till then, have a good one and bye-bye.